was going to be on today, which I do try to find some songs to sing with it. Sometimes it's difficult, nothing in the hymnal for Mark. This is a song that years ago is from 2000 when it was published. I was part of a cantata, and the name of the cantata is Who Do You Say I Am? And it goes through various characters being asked, who's this Jesus? And who do you think he is? Various answers were given. So there is a song which speaks to what our scripture will be about. And that is what I would like to, hopefully, with Zach, be able to do for you all today. And Grady, thanks for your help, Grady. It's a little bit wild. But right now, could we bow our heads, please, and lift this up? Father in heaven, you know my knees are shaking. My whole body is shaking right now. I would ask that you infuse us, Zach and I and Grady. May it be your spirit, your voice that is heard, your message that is given. May it all be you, Lord. I ask that this be an offering of praise, worship to you. And I thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to serve. I love you, Lord. We love you, Lord. In your Son's most precious name we pray. Amen. Can you hear me? Is my next question. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Say again?
Good.
You can hear good? All right. All right. Okay.
For
Mark chapter 8. Hey, if you ever watch it comedians on TV, and there's always that one heckler in a crowd.
What did you say?
I ain't gonna make the call. On the switch, on the switch. Now it's working, yeah. Mark chapter 8. We're going to continue on and looking at Jesus' teaching and ministry along with the disciples, and as we jump into this, and if you can tell by the song, Jesus is coming up on a time when he's going to ask them some very specific questions. And you know, all our days, all day long, we're surrounded by questions on it. And a lot of questions are just really meaningless, and it's more has to do with the now, and it really has no significance whatsoever, such as, you know, how many of you got up this morning, the first thing that popped in your first question was, what am I going to wear today? What's going to match my shoes? Which ones do I want to wear? What am I going to have for breakfast? What should I start for supper? And these are important questions for today, but as far as having a lasting purpose and meaning, do they matter? I mean, who could tell me what you had last Sunday night for supper? I don't know, I've slept since then. These questions are not, they're just temporary things. And there's some questions that are just flat unanswerable. Y'all know those kind of questions? For example, why do women open their mouths when they start putting on eye makeup? Nobody has an answer. I'm not going to pick on just the ladies either. Let me ask you this. Why is it guys cannot stop for anything to ask directions? There's no answer to that. It's quite an enigma. And how about this one? And this is the one that's boggled my mind for 50 years at least, but no more. How many of you ladies got them pans in your kitchen with a non-stick surface? So the food doesn't stick, right? How do they get that surface to stay on the pan? The non-stick surface on the pans. How do they get the surface to stay on the pan? There's no answer to these questions, right? Jesus is fixing to ask some questions, though, that have some eternal significance. And we understand questions sometimes that have huge significance for us and lasting impressions, like, you know, when you ask that significant other, will you marry me? That was huge, right? Or, what are we going to name the baby? That's a big question. That has lifetime significance, right? How about this one, doctor? What's my prognosis? And sometimes these questions, they get scary, and they mean business. There's lasting impressions. Jesus is asking questions that have eternal consequences. I mean, this is far deeper of a scope than what we can even imagine. Let's stand together as we read His Word and jump into it and look at these questions. In Mark chapter 8, starting at verse 27, it says, Now Jesus and His disciples went out of the towns of Caesarea Philippi, and on the road He asked His disciples, saying, Who do men say that I am? And so they answered, John the Baptist, but some say Elijah, and others one of the prophets. And He said to them, But who do you say that I am? And Peter answered and said to him, You are the Christ. And then He strictly warned them that they should tell no one about Him. Jack, you want to take us to a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, we thank You for this time that we have to come together and to worship You, God. We thank You for this message that's about to be presented to us, God, that You just speak through Brother Tim. Let everything that he said and does be glorifying to You, God. Just hide him behind the cross, God, and protect him from distractions. Keep his mind focused on the Word, and God, keep our minds focused on what You have to say through him. God, may we just examine our hearts in this time, and during the message and then even after, God, that we just continue to ask ourselves who You are to us, God. And I pray that we just make a relationship with You personal. And God, just open our hearts and minds to understanding now, to your word, the written and spoken word, God. We love you, we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Jesus asked a couple of questions there, didn't he? How many of us would have to struggle and try to decide how should we answer these questions? The first question, of course, was kind of easy. It was about public opinion. You know, our world leaders these days do that sometimes. They take those public polls. What do the people think about this idea? Where do we stand on public relations and all this, right? But the second question Jesus asked was a huge step away from the public opinion. It comes down to a personal opinion. Now, while both of these questions are significant, it's that second question that has the major impact on our lives today as well, because Jesus is still asking a question. Did y'all catch the title of this message?
Yeah.
How many of you liked that show, that game show that came out a few years ago? Was it Regis, right? Is that your final answer? And so, you know, we smile at that, we relate to that because Regis just had a way of saying that, right? But what a profound question that is. And these passages today, while it was, 3-4 short verses, have such a theological impact on our lives, it would do us well. Today, I don't want you to just hear a sermon on these scriptures. I want you to take these scriptures to heart. I want you to take them home with you and think about this all week. And turn these over in your mind and ask yourself these questions. Because some questions cannot be easily answered. While we think, yeah, we have quick answers, we got the easy answers, that may just not be the case. And I hope I give you something you can take with you and think about this week as we get into this. Jesus and his disciples had left Bethsaida. They had walked about 25 miles north to this area called Caesarea Philippi. This was a Gentile area. And guess who named this town? He built it up and named it that. You want to know why? Herod Philip had built this town and then named it in honor of the Caesar. How cool is that? Because he wants to stay on good terms with him. And in those days, in those Gentile nations, a pagan nation, these folks worshiped Caesar as God. The citizens, at least once a year, had to go to the temple, pick up a little pinch of incense, throw it in the fire, and say, Caesar is Lord. I don't know how crazy is that. This is an area this was not the first time it's been involved with pagan worship. This goes all the way back to the original town. Years before that was called, hang on, I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget it. It's a funny name. Baladeus. You want to know why? Because it was a central location where they worshiped the god Baal. Pagan worship. Later on, the Greeks would rename the town Panaeus, but in honor of their Greek god Pan. Y'all remember Pan, don't you? Do you? For those of you who don't, he was the god, the Greek god that was like half man and half goat.
Yeah.
As if we're not already, right? I need you to agree then. But by this time, Herod Philip had built it up, renamed it Caesarea Philippi, and it was in the backdrop of this city. They're standing outside on the roads, and Jesus started asking these questions amongst all this pagan nation, this Gentile nation, the pagan worship going on. Jesus uses this as a moment to ask some inquisitive questions to his disciples, because I want you to think about everything that's been going on from the time he's called them to walk with him, to witness his ministry, to be a part of it, of all the sermons they've heard, of all the teaching moments they've had, of all the seminars they've sat in to speak and listen to, of all the miracles they've seen. This is all building up to this one defining moment, because this is like a turning point. Jesus has been teaching, he's been growing, but later on as we go through the Mark, you're going to see this was a significant turning point, because after this, the opposition starts to grow, and Jesus has reached the peak, and now he's headed to Calvary. He asks his guys, who do do men say that I am? Now, Jesus, he wasn't looking for praise. He wasn't even seeking a pat on the back or an attaboy. He was asking them what they're hearing, leading them to process it and decide what it is they believe. He says, who do men say that I am? Did y'all like those answers? What would you think about those answers? Who do men say that I am? They said some say John the Baptist. Some say Elijah, or it says Elias, they was referring to Elijah. And others, one of the prophets. Well, you know, when you stop and think about some of those answers, and I can just picture them walking along that Jesus got kind of half-hearted, throws this question out there, hey, what's the talk around town about me? Who do people think I am? One of them kicks a rock and says, well, I heard this bunch over here saying you might be John the Baptist. Now here's the problem I have with that, because Jesus had been seen with John the Baptist. They were contemporaries, up to a point. And the significant point was John the Baptist lost his head, right? Herod Antipas had to be beheaded. Herod Antipas sincerely thought that Jesus was John the Baptist's return. And that may be the cornerstone of where that thought and that process in people's minds had started. Somebody started a rumor, John's returned, and the king is scared of him. Who knows? But it was one of those things they had heard. And then one of the others, maybe on the other side of the room, says, well, you know, I heard a group the other day talking about it. They think he's Elijah. How cool is that? Elijah. Why in the world would Elijah return? But it's a little bit more believable, maybe. Elijah, you know, they both had a very clear, convincing preaching ministry. They both performed miracles. And then others, one of the others speaks up and says, you know what? They're saying Elijah. I've also heard others say something, maybe one of the other prophets. Now, I want you to think for a minute about all these huge, big names, significant luminaries that he would be compared with within the ranks of the prophets. We've got Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, and a whole host of others. And so, how good would it be to be included in the in crowd? Oh, he's a prophet. He's a prophet. And Jesus was saying, well, who do men say I am? In other words, let's bring this up to our modern vernacular. Jesus is saying, hey, what's the public opinion of my ministry? Who do people think I am? What do they think? Who am I? And they're saying, well, John the Baptist, or one of the prophets. Or let's bring this up to our day. Who do people say Jesus is? Y'all ever talk about the gospel? Talk about Jesus outside of church. Go to the store, go to work, talk to your friends, your neighbors. Talk to your enemies about Jesus. They probably need to hear more than anybody, right? What do they think about Jesus? And I've heard people with all kinds of opinions. You know, the Pharisees and the religious elitists called Jesus the devil. The scribes had called him, in Mark chapter 3, which we had studied previously, they called him Beelzebub. In other words, he's Satan, and he's the prince of the demons. And that's how he's casting out the devils. The Sanhedrin said he was a false prophet, that he spoke blasphemy. And they didn't need to hear any other witnesses. Let's do away with him. His own family had even said in Mark chapter 3, yeah, you're right, he's crazy. He's beside himself. He needs help. What do people say about Jesus today, though? There's all kinds of opinions out there. Oh, he was a great man. He was a good philosopher. He was a prophet. He was a man of God. Now, I'm going to draw the line at son of God, though. I don't believe he was God. The Muslims, how many of you have Muslim friends? The Muslims say Jesus was a prophet, but he was not crucified on the cross. He will return, but he is not God. That's the way they see Jesus. The Hindus, anybody know what the Hindus believe? The Jews believe that Jesus was a great prophet and teacher, but he is not God. Anybody have any Mormon friends? The Mormons believe that Jesus was the first baby born to God in heaven. But they believe God in a physical body had relations with Mary. And they also believe that Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus, is the brother of Lucifer. Do you understand what they say? That Jesus and Satan are brothers. How sick of a belief is that? What about atheists? Anybody ever been an atheist or somebody that claims to be an atheist? You know what the atheists say? There is no God. You know what the problem is with atheism? Just as soon as something goes wrong in their life, you're screaming, "Oh God, help!" How can you call on somebody you don't believe in? And what about the agnostic? You know what an agnostic is? An agnostic is, and I believe there's probably many more agnostics out there, and even in the church today, who don't recognize the word, would say, "I'm not an agnostic," but by definition they are, because of all these things we've already talked about, of all these different beliefs, and the popular opinion of what they're teaching in the universities. When somebody says, "Well, who is Jesus?" and they scratch their heads and I just don't know what I should believe about him. That is an agnostic. They're so confused they don't know what to believe. And you know what? I don't know how many of you ever been at a university or on that level of education, but you hear so many different conflicting theories and concepts and principles. And it can be a confusing time. You get to the point where, what do I believe? What is true? Because I'm going to tell you, our modern educational system is very, a whole lot further than just agnostic. They're just downright atheists. They're anti-God. They don't have anything to do with it. Just like all the other institutions in our world and our society, just remove God. Not everybody in Jesus' day was totally against Jesus. As a matter of fact, there were a whole bunch of folks in the Bible that got it right. If we come right down to that point, they were asked the question, they got it right. You know what? John the Baptist got it right. When Jesus comes walking up to him, John the Baptist, just on sight, "Behold, the Lamb of God, who's here to take away the sin of the world." Man, what a testimony. Huge. The angels got it right. Do you remember what their announcements were to the shepherds? "For you, until you this day is born a Savior. God's here. It's all going to work out. It's okay." Simeon got it right. You remember him? He was a priest in the temple when they come to dedicate the baby Jesus. And his covenant with God was, God had revealed it to him. He was going to allow him to live until he saw the Messiah born. When they walked in with Jesus, he said, "Thank you, God. You have allowed me to see the glory of God. I can pass in peace." How beautiful is that? What a testimony. You remember Adam, the prophetess woman who was saved him? She had been a widow for years and years and years and always served faithfully. And she openly testified when she heard about Jesus. She got it right. She had been waiting all that time, and her faithfulness had paid off. What about the dying thief on the cross? Did he get it right? "Lord, remember me when you enter your kingdom." Lord, I believe. What's it take to be saved? Belief. One word. A thief died on a cross for his crimes and sins. Says, "Lord, just please remember me." What a beautiful passage. What about the Roman centurion that was standing at his feet and realized who he was right there at the crucifixion? Truly, this man was the Son of God. He wasn't joking about that. When you start out saying truly, that was sincere. He had really recognized what was going on. What about the blind man? How about Bartimaeus? Y'all remember him? Was healed and left praising God. What about the crowds outside of Jerusalem as Jesus marched into Jerusalem at the beginning of that Passion Week? Throwing things down on the ground, said, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." This is a crowd shouting. And the Roman government tried to tell Jesus, "Hey, you need to quiet them down. We can't have this. This is good. This is too much uproar." You remember, I love Jesus said. You remember what he said? "Oh, I tell them to be quiet, but the rocks will just start shouting." Have you ever seen a rock shout? You know, I would almost like to go in there and see him ask the quiet the craftsman just to hear the rock shout, because I believe the rocks would have shouted because he said it. You want to know why? How's this for opinion? Who does God say that Jesus is? You remember that? Matthew chapter 3, verse 17. "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And again in Matthew 17, when Jesus was transfigured, he said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Listen to him. Now, if God is saying Jesus is his Son, I don't know about you, but that's good enough for me. I don't need anybody else's opinion. God said it, I'm going to believe it. Because if God lied to me, then we got to throw the whole book away. The whole thing is discredited. But that's not what he said. He said, "This is my Son. Listen to him. Listen to him." So many got it right. Some got it wrong. People today, some are getting it right, and they're getting it wrong. Just went through the whole list of those beliefs. But after pushing for all this public opinion, Jesus asked one of the important questions. He says, "No, wait a minute. Who do you say that I am?" Folks, this is digging deep now, because now the disciples had to stop in their tracks. The answer they have to give is reflective of what's in their heart. How many of you like being asked your opinion about something? And we always start out trying to justify ourselves. Now wait a minute, just keep in mind that this is strictly my opinion. Right? We all do that, don't we? I can just see that now. Thomas going on, "Jesus, my personal opinion on this is," Peter said, "What I got is, I'll speak for the group." Peter was always the one to speak for the group. And Peter says, "You're the Christ." Maybe Matthew was over there going, "Is he really?" I'll throw that out there because, when you've got a group of folks and you've got a spokesman for the group, oftentimes what they say, because, hey, and you agree with me because we've all been in groups, right? Oftentimes what they agree or decide to say is not the general consensus of the whole group. In other words, it's rare to get a unanimous decision. But Peter spoke up and just, maybe he didn't even discuss it. Maybe Jesus had looked right at Peter and asked Peter directly, who do you say that I am? Peter said, "You're the Christ." Now our passage today said that after Peter had said that, he had strictly warned them that he should tell no one about him. But in the complementary passage of this same thing, in Mark 16 and starting verse 20, well, right before that, in verse 15, he says, "Who do you say that I am?" 16, Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then it says, Jesus answered him and said, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah." That's just Simon, son of Jonah. If you didn't get that, Simon's daddy's name is Jonah. "Son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven." In other words, the Holy Spirit opened his eyes and allowed him to realize who Jesus was at that moment when Jesus was asking the question. And I can just imagine everything that he's ever heard, seen, and saw Jesus do for the last several years was flooding through his mind, and he realized, "You're God. You're the Messiah. You're the Son." And understand what he said, "You're the Messiah." The Messiah was the title. This was saying, "You're the anointed. You're the hope of Israel. You're the promise that centuries. And Jesus would say, perhaps putting these two passages together, he said, congratulations, Simon, because nobody told you that. Your eyes were open. It was revealed to you. But then he would go on and say, but don't tell anybody else about it. Not right now. It's not time. And I suspect he was saying this to Peter for a whole other reason, because if Peter started openly, publicly declaring it, he'd have a lot of crow to eat later. And Jesus knew that. He said, congratulations, Peter. You got it right this time. What he didn't ask him was, is that your final answer? And that's where the soul searching comes in for each and every one of us today. Because while Peter might have got it right then, just a few short verses down, from where we left off, he says, he strictly warned them, don't tell anybody about this. In verse 30, by the time we get to verse 33, Jesus is looking at Peter, he's talking to Peter, and he says, get behind me, Satan. In 4 verses, we've gone to the opposite extremes. Because you know what? Peter's a human being, and he is just as fickle and crazy and self-seeking as anybody else. We can change our minds just like that. And change them again, and just, you know, some days we change our minds faster than a ping pong ball can be bounced back and forth on the table. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Jesus knew that. Don't tell anybody. Because he also knew that in just a little while, Peter was going to face a huge crisis. Now understand, Jesus knew Peter. Jesus had already made some humongous prophecies about Peter. He had changed his name. Hey, you're Peter. On this rock, I'm going to build my church. In other words, you're a stronghold. You're going to be a leader. You're going to be a shepherd. And Peter's got a lot to go through. Satan's going to ask to sift Peter. Peter's going to fall. Peter's going to deny Jesus. How many times? 3 times. 3 times, just boom, boom, boom. I don't know this Jesus. Never heard of him. Could you imagine what pierced Peter's heart when he heard that rooster start crowing? I've heard a rooster start crowing in the mornings. You know what pierced my heart? A sudden urge to get up and kill a chicken. But that wasn't Peter's mind. What Peter heard right after that rooster started crowing was Jesus' voice. You're going to die here before the chicken, before that rooster. It makes that first sound. Peter, in fact, did. And Peter would also be restored by the Lord Jesus. Jesus come to him after that. After the resurrection, he's sitting there having breakfast with his disciples. Pulls Peter aside and says, Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Feed my lambs. Peter, do you love me? And you know, we can just say that all day long. Doesn't mean a whole lot to us, does it? Because we've lost track of the word love. As a matter of fact, love, we talked about this before, so many words were translated into the word love. What was Jesus actually saying? And I've heard many people address this many different ways. Jesus was using in the text, in the original language, he's using 2 different words. Jesus was saying, Peter, do you love me? And the word he was using was agape, which is just a total, I cherish you, you are everything in the world to me. I love you unconditionally. No matter what, I would die for you. We understand that kind of love, right? And it's hard to live up to it. When Peter would say, well, Jesus, yes, I love you. Yes, I love you. Peter wasn't using the agape. He was using a phileo word, which was, yeah, I love you. We're pals. Well, we grew up together. Not necessarily unconditional. In other words, we wanted to use a more modern, but again, a more modern vernacular. This conversation might have went something like this. Peter, do you even like me? Yeah, Jesus, I like you. No, Peter, I mean, do you adore me? Well, of course, we're pals. We've known each other forever. No, Peter, would you die? And it says the 3rd time Peter asked, he was grieved. And the 3rd time he was asked, he conceded, yes, I love denials and the 3 affirmations. After that, Peter would never deny the Lord Jesus again. As a matter of fact, he would be a very outspoken evangelist for the rest of his life. As a matter of fact, Peter would go on and die for Jesus. He would never deny him again. He was crucified, traditionally upside down. Either way doesn't sound like fun. I've seen people cringe when you say, yeah, he was crucified upside down, but I'm thinking to myself, you know, even right side up, that's not good. That's brutal. So, we've got Jesus asking these 2 questions. One is a public opinion. Who do people say that I am? And we can ask that all day long. What's the world saying about Jesus? You know what? We know the world's opinion about Jesus. But the question is, who do I say that Jesus is? Who do you say Jesus is? And this is the whole gist of the question at the beginning. Is that your final answer? You remember when Regis asked that question, it was like a cliffhanger question. It left the option of, I can change my mind. This doesn't have to be my final answer either. And a good thing for Peter, because if Jesus said, hey, is that your final answer? Guess what? A few days later, he denied it. That's not a final answer. Peter, is this your final answer? So, the question is, if Jesus walked up to you today and said, who am I to you? How we answer that question has eternal consequences. Oh, you're a great leader. You're a great prophet, a good moral teacher. Or is Jesus my everything, my Lord, my Savior, my Redeemer, my friend? There's more words than he is. But before we answer that too quick, yes, he's my Lord, he's my Savior, he's my Redeemer. Think about it. Meditate on it. Reread those scriptures. And do some soul searching. Because you know what? It's one thing to say what we think. Ask Peter. But Peter was fickle as well. Changed his mind a few days later. And the simple fact is, it doesn't matter what we say. Y'all understand it? It doesn't matter what we say. Action speaks a whole lot louder than words. And that is why a lot of folks in the world point their finger at the church and say hypocrites. Actions speak a whole lot louder than words. If you truly love somebody, you want to spend all the time in the world you can with them. And quite frankly, the habit these days is we get up this Sunday morning and say, man, I'm just tired. I think we'll go back to bed. It's been a hard week. I need the rest. Or maybe for some folks, church is just a big inconvenience in between breakfast and kickoff time at noon. What's the kickoff? Oftentimes, church for a lot of folks, it's just that thing tacked on the end. Well, if I have time, I'll go to church. But when our weeks get busy, what's the first thing that gets cut out? Church. We're treating Jesus just like we're treating our tithe. Well, I got to pay my bills, and I want this thing over here, and I got to go pick this up for myself. The kids would like to have that, and if there's anything left over at the end of the week, I'm going to give that to the church. That's not tithe. And quite frankly, if you're giving Jesus the leftover of your time, your actions are saying, Jesus is not Lord to me. That is the cold hard facts. If I went home, better yet, if I decided that I'm really tired, which I am, I mean, we can sit down and I can logically give you a convincing argument about how tired I am. But since I need to rest, I think I'm just going to crash back here in the office and rest today. It'll be quiet, and I'm just not going to go home. What's that going to say to my wife and family about my relationship? Do I love them? Why am I staying away? You start staying out all night long, and you go home, what's your other significant other going to say? Where you been? Why didn't you come home? Actions speak a whole lot louder than words. You know, you can talk yourself blue in the face, and you will never talk yourself out of that jail. Jesus is still asking. That's why the passages in the Bible today, Jesus is still asking, who do you say that I am? Think about it, because it doesn't matter what we say. What we're doing speaks volumes. And one of these days, we're going to be standing before Him in His presence. And He's going to say, who am I? Who am I to you? Who do you think that I am? It's probably closely followed by, what did you do for me? Well, Lord, I threw a dollar bill in the pot every Sunday that it come around. And you know what He's going to say to what? Every Sunday, or just the Sundays that you happen to be at church? Opposite end of the spectrum. It is what it is. I'm not going to apologize for preaching truth. Our actions show the world